Welcome in, everybody. This is the Sports and Political Podcast coming to you live from Toledo, Ohio. It's so interesting just to watch the Supreme Court made two rulings today, and I believe that what we're looking at here is ridiculous. I mean, it's ridiculous, it's stupid, and I'll get to it in a minute, but let's understand this, okay? The Supreme Court is not racist. They do not hate specific groups of people. In fact, you could argue in their defense of gay rights, in their defense of Planned Parenthood. Listen, Planned Parenthood is alive and kicking. Now, it's kind of like the NRA of the left, in the sense that, like, the more people on the other side hate it, the better its business profits are. So, if I were an NRA member, I would vote Democrat every year. If I were a Planned Parenthood member, I would vote right every year. Because the profits of your corporation, of whatever association that you have, the polarization, opposite that, they're saying all publicity is good publicity, whether it's good or bad. And that applies here. So, again, the point is this. The Supreme Court is not racist. It's not sexist anymore. It may have been 80 years. But this idea that, oh my God, when the entire country was racist, the Supreme Court was racist too. How does that apply here? When the entire country was sexist, the Supreme Court acted sexist. Again, that's not to absolve the blame, but these are human beings. And even if they were to take that aside, they are not allowed to use a moral compass when judging these things. That is fact. They're supposed to use a legal compass. Okay, and let's be honest. Let's be honest. Both of the Supreme Court decisions were correct. And I'll go through one briefly. So, a pro-life meeting area, I believe, I will check this out. A pro-life meeting area in California was, let me read this, from Fox News. Supreme Court rules in favor of pro-life crisis pregnancy centers and fight over California law. The Supreme Court ruled Tuesday in favor of pro-life crisis pregnancy centers that counsel pregnant women to make choices other than abortion, invalidating a California law requiring them to prominently post information on how to obtain a state-funded abortion. Alright, now everyone knows what my view on abortion is. But this is my issue. Everyone knows what abortion is. If you have access to a computer, you can find information on it. If you know you're going to a pro-life crisis pregnancy center, you obviously know they're not going to prominently post information on abortions. Why would you go to a pro-life pregnancy center then? If you wanted to have an abortion, just go to Planned Parenthood. I mean, my God. If the person, okay, listen, the business can sell, can put advertisements as to whatever it wants, okay? This has freedom of speech implications, it has freedom of religion implications. But the idea, what boggles my mind is it would be a completely different thing if the options were not available, or they were not telling you about the options anywhere else. But you can find this information anywhere. You go home from the center, guess what? Search up how to get an abortion. State-funded abortion in California. The freedom of speech for the other side exists everywhere other than in this pregnancy center. And again, they have freedom of religion, they have freedom of speech, as does the other side, except the other side uses or has that tool and applies it in other faculties. It doesn't have to be that business. A business cannot decide what it wants to solicit. The government has to decide that. The government wants to not only invade a business, tell them what they're doing is wrong, and force them to advertise something contrary to what they are doing. By the way, I'm pretty sure not every pregnant California woman goes to this center or goes to these centers. I'm pretty sure they can leave, and I'm pretty sure it's very understandable. It's very easy to figure out whether or not this center is pro-life. Just ask the freaking question. Do you promote abortions? They say no. Get out if you want to. But don't infringe on their right. Don't infringe on the business right. You have the right not to go to a certain center. Don't go. But the center themselves has a right to promote certain ways of doing things that do not violate any personal boundaries that the clients might have. If that is all true, they should not be forced to promulgate government information specifically designed to take down their center. Are you kidding me? This is communism, folks. This isn't even socialism. Because the object of socialism is to regulate business in order to maintain the utmost fairness. This is government literally taking the business by its horns, saying, guess what? I'm going to kill this business unless you do something that we want you to do. This is communism. Invasion of rights. I mean, shove aside the personal opinions about abortion, okay? I'm not for it. I don't care. Okay, this has nothing to do with the issue at stake. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion. Both are being violated here. Thirdly, the government is infiltrating itself into business. Not only that, it is taking over the business. The primary practice of the business was being altered because the government forced them to do so. Do you understand why people are scared this country will become communist? This is why. Alright, so the second and the big case of the day was that the Supreme Court said that Trump's travel ban is perfectly acceptable within the rule of law. And as I have mentioned before, everyone wants to say, oh, well, the Supreme Court did stupid things 150 years ago. Therefore, this is stupid. I mean, my God, and there are two angles I'm going to take here. Let's discuss the Supreme Court first. Alright, you do realize, right, that most Jews, were not allowed to enter the United States during the war against the Nazis because there was fear that the Jews were acting like Jews and were actually Nazis. Again, what I am going to say is this. He said something in the campaign, in the first week of the campaign. Okay? He said something, and yet we are applying it to a legal justification. The New York Times said the Supreme Court used legal rules to circumvent the obvious racism in this rule. Are you kidding me? First of all, it's not racist because there's 50 majority Muslim countries on this planet. 5 of them were being temporarily blocked. Similar to what President Obama did with Iraq in 2011. Let me point that out. Number 2, if I hear this, oh, he didn't ban countries that weren't involved with his businesses. Like every other politician in the United States, back channels exist. If governments, if foreign entities give money to campaigns via charity or straight up or through middlemen, they're going to get favors. Bribery works this way. It has always worked like this. That doesn't make it right. But stop acting as if this is unprecedented, or that you didn't expect this from politics. This is what politics is. Read Machiavelli. People so naive. But anyway, so the law states, essentially, that based on national security interest, you can halt any immigration on the basis of this national security interest. You can halt immigration from specific countries. Okay? And these countries, or the reason why we're doing this, I don't think anyone understands, because no one's been killed here. Not literally no one, but no one experiences it here. Because there's been no draft, thank God. Because once you turn 18, men aren't being forced to go to the military like they were in the 1940s and the 1960s. Okay? So what? What are we at this point? Okay. You realize we've been at war for 16 and a half years, the longest war in the history of the United States. We are still at war. There are still people in Iraq and Syria and Somalia and Afghanistan, all these different places. There are men fighting for the United States on the ground, in the air, still fighting, still trying to kill terrorists. So, by the way, if we literally were to say this, refugees, people in these 7 or 8 countries where the terrorists are infiltrated. And I'm not advocating for this, please. I have a completely different policy. But I really want to throw out this idea. If we literally banned immigration from the entire Middle East, just from Asia, and by the way, Asia's our most productive. South Asia is more productive than the Middle East in terms of like software engineering and like technological work. So you'd still be getting the effective immigration. But if you literally ban the entire Middle East from entering the United States, you realize we could end this war in a day. Right? Again, I'm not advocating for this. This isn't like a good idea. This isn't a morally correct idea. But the war could be ended in a day. In a day. If we literally just said, look, we're in all of these countries. None of you can come here. None of you can come here at all until you get your act together. I don't care however long that is, but none of you can come here. The war would be over in 2 minutes. You realize that, right? If we literally just isolated the Middle East from the rest of the world, the war would be over. I'm not saying we do that because of morality issues, because of humanitarian issues. but the war could be over within a minute if the entire free world just said, "You are a major screw-up, fix this mess, or continue to be a major screw-up." I just want to put that in perspective. I'm not advocating for it. I'm not saying it's a good or a morally correct idea. I'm just saying if we did this, we could end a war in a minute. Alright? While still maintaining our major alliances. But we're not going to do that, obviously. Obviously, that's a horrible idea. The Supreme Court and Trump on any national security basis can say the people from these countries can't come here. You know what the national security interest is? The longest war in American history. That's what the interest is. What we can end this war by solving this issue. Okay? The 9/11, the Paris attacks, Boston Marathon, those are the national security interests. There is not. See, this is my issue. Max Kellerman said this on ESPN. And I think it is profound. I think it is profoundly incorrect, but I still think it is a profound statement in that he said, so it was about Kevin Durant not wanting to go to the White House for a NBA championship ceremony, and Kellerman said, well, look, there are a few times in human history where disagreement cannot occur. This is one of those few times in human history, referring to Trump's alleged racism, that this cannot occur. Okay, Kellerman. See, this is what the left does. What the left does is say, look, this is racist, this is sexist, this is homophobic, when there are reasonable explanations that can be crafted. There are reasonable legal explanations. Obviously, these countries harbor terrorists. We don't want terrorists here. They could disguise themselves as refugees. We wouldn't know because of our backlog system. We have to improve the system. Until then, we're not going to allow potential threats into the United States. This is a reasonable argument and conclusion to draw. There is nothing racist about this. You may not like the way the guy said it at first. And by the way, I've said this as well. Oh my God, there's only a few terrorists in the Islamic faith. Yes, that's obvious. There's always only a few bad apples in a large group of people. If that wasn't the case, humanity would have died out at its beginning because humans were that terrible. But again, this is what I say. And I will say this, and I think even people of the Islamic faith will agree with me. Extremism I don't define that. I don't blanket that as just terrorism. If you actually believe that gays should be stoned, if you actually believe that your wife shouldn't be able to drive a car, if you actually believe that if a restaurant or a business you are wearing a full-on burqa, I'm not talking about just the headdress, I am talking about where they can barely see the slits of your eyes, and they dare to ask you to take it off because of who knows what kind of threat you may pose. Number one, that people identify that with terrorism. Number two, if not that, it's plain and simple robbery. And I'm not saying those people are like that. I'm not arguing that at all. There are tons of great people that are Muslims. But it's a reasonable question to ask. Look, I don't know if you're safe if all I see of you are eye slits. That goes for a white guy, that goes for a Muslim person, that goes for a Christian, that goes for Hindu, that goes for anyone. If you are wearing a mask-esque type of thing, that will be perceived by a threat to anyone regardless of who's wearing the mask or what the mask is for. So again, it's things of that nature. Cultural assimilation in that regard. That I put into the basket of extremism. Not that they're terrorists. Not that they're bad people either. Good people can be taught and interpret things in the extreme way. That doesn't mean they're bad people. But again, if your cultural values, and there are tons of moderate Muslims whose cultural values intersect with the American values, and that's fine, come here. But if those values don't exist, and by the way I would test for this is a covert operation where we have several Muslim agents, through conversational questioning, go through these processes with soon-to-get visa Muslims, or not even Muslims, any immigrant. Okay, this shouldn't be just applied to Muslims. This should apply to every immigrant in the United States. Wanting to enter the United States. The integrity of our culture only maintains if we do this. It's comprehensive reform. It applies to everyone, so it's not racist, or it doesn't target a specific group of people. I was talking about Muslims simply because of the term Muslim ban. But anyway, it's not racist, it's comprehensive. It doesn't stop people from coming for the actions of the few. It doesn't stop that. So again, that's one of the more comprehensive reforms I could get behind. I also get behind this. I mean, no one's willing to actually reform this. So, unless we do that, you're always going to have this issue. Okay, so I want to say this. The concept, right, of a tariff. A tariff is a tax. Stop telling me NAFTA was such a terrible thing. What NAFTA was what NAFTA brought the United States was it was good. Temporary job increases followed by long-term decreases in manufacturing jobs, but we got cheaper products. Okay, I've talked about currency manipulation. And this is one of the points that I have to change my view on this. Why is currency manipulation such a bad thing for the United States? Why is it such a bad thing? Because what happens with currency manipulation is that the stuff that is sold from China or Mexico into the United States is cheaper than if it were equated to a set higher value. So the products are cheaper. Now, if we were to back it by an idea I've given out, gold, the value increases or the value increases and it is set. Maintaining permanent inflation in the U.S. Because the costs will skyrocket. People aren't suddenly going to be earning more money. So again, there's no need to tariff over currency manipulation. And the concept of tariffs over intellectual property, this should be the ultimate truth of the matter. If a corporation, a Chinese corporation, and the United States, corporation decide to have some mutual investment opportunity, something of that sort, then what needs to occur is this. Very simply, this needs to occur. A contract, individual contracts need to be written, signed, preventing this. Okay, it needs to be ratified by both governments in the United States, both Chinese and United States governments. If the agreement on the Chinese part is not followed through, immediately the United States government has consent to take the money away from the Chinese corporation. And if they don't, then a global group of investors, America, Europe, Africa, all of them must close their markets entirely unless this money is paid back for this company. You do not want to be isolated from the rest of the world. Because guess what? The Europeans aren't stealing our intellectual property. They're working with us. India is not doing that. I don't believe they are. Other parts of Asia are not doing that. It is solely China that is doing that. So the rest of the world continues trading while these Chinese corporations are kept in the dark and they go back to an industrial age and they die out. Business does. That's what you want, China? That's what you want? Because I'm pretty sure that's not what your corporations want. That's not what your 21st century economy wants. So I would be very strict. Don't tariff, but immediately the government of the United States, along with a global coalition, must demand money back on stolen intellectual property. Must demand it. $225 to $600 billion per year are being lost. It's ridiculous. Now, as far as tariffs go, I'm not a big tariff fan. I don't agree with what the president did with Harley Davidson and Europe. Unilaterally cut off tariffs. Okay, if you want manufacturing jobs to come back to the United States, do this. Cut the taxes. Make it a tax-free environment for companies in the global sphere to come back to the United States. Okay, literally tax-free. Because you're not losing money by them deciding to come back. You're gaining things. You are gaining things by having a tax-free policy for those corporations outside of the United States. A repatriation tax holiday is a tax holiday specifically directed towards individuals and businesses in one country who repatriate to that country income earned in another. Theory is that such an action bring income from the second country back to their home country, so they'll be unlikely to bring this income back home. It's not about the income. It's not about the one-time tax. The one-time tax, that's never going to do anything. They don't even pay these out. What you need to do, number one, tax holiday on repatriation, that pretty much already exists. Secondly, dang near permanent tax holiday. It's so interesting. Repatriation tax holiday is a failed policy. Correct. Yes. You know why? Because they don't pay that. You want them to bring money back? Make the U.S. tax policy, the corporate tax policy, the first 5 to 10 years, slowly increasing up to the normal rate of 25. A slow increase. Literally. Save your profits for 10 years. Because guess what? If you're doing that in China, and we can get even a little cut of it in the United States with major job growth, with major opportunity, I'll take it. The rich are getting richer. The rich will get that same amount of money in China that they are in the United States, except here, the middle class jobs that you want are being created due to the investment. You're not giving them more money. They have the same amount of money. The difference is more people in the U.S. have jobs, have work, are doing the things necessary to improve in life. That's what you get from a tax holiday that isn't just a repatriation holiday, but is a tax holiday for corporate taxes once you enter the U.S. It's not just about the one-time cash. They're not going to bring all that back for a one-time tax holiday when the tax rates in China and the scales there are much more competitive for them. Make here more competitive along with a repatriation holiday that pretty much already exists because they claim that the money is put in permanent investments, though we know it's not because of the multitude of companies that have come back to the United States. Reform the taxes here. The tax holiday won't work without corporate tax reform. Okay, so that's that. There's no need to tariff or tax for this. In fact, if you don't tax at all, that's the incentive for the companies to come here. Tariffs don't work. Unilateral decreases of tariffs work. A 0% corporate tax rate, a 10% income tax rate is much, much, much more friendly for the worker, for the consumer, than any tariff or trying to even out the playing field on currency manipulation. I got this wrong. I got that particular part wrong. But I'm willing to accept my mistake because the competitiveness of business, the evolution of the economy, job growth and wage growth are the four most important goals, and all of them get achieved by a no tariff, no even playing field on currency manipulation, low tax, if even a no tax repatriation type of system. This is the Ashish's Sports and Political Podcast, coming to you live from Hilliard, Ohio. We will be back with stuff on the MVP award and why that's stupid, as well as apparently people are up in arms about this whole free agency thing. We'll get into that next. Coming up on the Ashish Sports and Political Podcast.